Welcome to the Deep Dive. We sift through the information overload to bring you what really matters. Today, we're tackling a really fascinating historical puzzle. It's all about electric cars versus, the traditional gasoline ones. Everyone talks about EVs now, their efficiency. But here's the big question we want to get into. If electric cars were so efficient, even way back, why did gasoline cars completely dominate for, over 100 years? There's some surprising twists here. Okay, let's unpack this. So, to really set the scene for this mystery, let's start with the raw numbers. The difference in just basic energy efficiency between electric motors and gasoline engines. It's kind of mind-blowing, isn't it?
Oh, it absolutely is. Stark contrast. Think of it like this. An electric motor.
It's super efficient. It takes about, say, 80 to 90% of the energy stored in the battery.
80 to 90?
Yeah, and turns that directly into making the car move. Most of the energy does the actual work. Now, the internal combustion engine, your typical gas car, much, much lower. We're talking maybe 30 to 40% efficiency. Wait, so only 30 or 40% actually moves the car. Where does the other 60, 70% go?
Well, that's the thing. It's mostly wasted. Dispersed as heat, the engine gets hot, the exhaust gets hot, and also lost to mechanical friction within the engine itself. Only a fraction actually propels a vehicle forward.
Wow. So feeling a hot engine is literally feeling wasted energy.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
And you can see this in practical terms, like fuel consumption. An EV might use around, let's say, 20 kilowatt hours of energy to go 100 kilometers. A kilowatt hour is just a unit of energy, like a gallon of gas is a unit of fuel.
Okay, 20 kilowatt hours.
Right. Now, an equivalent gasoline car, to travel that same 100 kilometers, would burn through the energy equivalent of about 100 kilowatt hours.
100 compared to 20.
Exactly. So the EV is roughly, 4 times more efficient in just using the energy it carries. There was actually a study at University of Pisa, I think, that put it at about 3.5 times more efficient for an EV compared to a similar gasoline car. So yeah, consistently much better.
Okay, those figures are really compelling. But efficiency isn't always the whole story, historically speaking. What does this efficiency mean for the bigger picture? Environmentally, that's obviously a huge focus now.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting. Beyond just how it uses energy while driving, the advantage holds up across the whole life cycle. So you factor in manufacturing the car, making the battery, generating the electricity, even recycling at the end. Even with all that, an electric car produces almost 4 times fewer greenhouse gas emissions over its entire life compared to a gasoline car.
4 times less, even including battery production.
Yes, even accounting for that. So the environmental edge is pretty significant, not just a small difference.
Okay, so efficient, cleaner, it seems like a slam dunk. Which brings us to the real head-scratcher, the plot twist in car history.
Right.
If EVs were this good on paper and actually existed early on, how did gasoline cars end up ruling the road for, over a century and a half? It just doesn't seem logical at first glance.
It's a fantastic question. And yeah, it is a major twist. Because back at the turn of the 20th century, late 1800s, early 1900s, electric cars were actually very promising, especially in cities. People liked them. They were simple to operate, quiet.
No noisy engine, no fumes.
Exactly. And less maintenance. No oil changes, fewer moving parts. And get this, between about 1900 and 1910, there were lots of electric cars driving around, even electric taxis in big cities like New York.
Electric taxis?
Yeah.
Wow, so they had infrastructure too. Charging.
They did. There were charging stations popping up in cities. It wasn't like today's network, obviously, but the basic idea was there. They had a real foothold.
Okay, so they had the tech advantage, early adoption, some infrastructure. So what went wrong? What was the big roadblock?
The main issue, the real Achilles heel, was the battery. The technology just wasn't there yet. Early lead-acid battery, they were heavy, really heavy.
Right.
And they didn't hold much charge, so the range was very limited, maybe 30, 40 miles if you were lucky.
Oof. Not great for trips.
Not at all. And recharging took a long time, hours and hours. So fine for short city hops, maybe, but totally impractical for longer journeys, or if you lived out in the countryside where electricity wasn't even common yet.
Okay, battery limits. Makes sense. Any other factors pushing gasoline forward?
Definitely. External events played a huge role. World War I, for instance. The war really pushed the development of internal combustion engines. Armies needed vehicles they could refuel quickly anywhere, vehicles with better performance and ruggedness.
Ah, logistics. Quick refueling beats slow charging in a war zone.
Absolutely. And those wartime improvements then filtered down into civilian cars, making gasoline vehicles even better and more reliable.
And wasn't there one specific invention around that time Something that made gasoline cars way easier to use. Something about starting them.
Yes, you're spot on. That was a killer blow, really. The invention of the electric starter motor for gasoline engines, that was around 1916.
Before that, you had to hand crank them, right?
Exactly. A big, often difficult, sometimes dangerous crank handle on the front. You had to physically turn the engine over to get it started.
I can't even imagine doing that every day.
Right, it was a hassle. The electric starter made starting a gasoline car as simple as pushing a button or turning a key. Suddenly, it was just as convenient to start as an electric car.
Ah, so it eliminated one of the EV's key convenience advantages.
Precisely. But the gasoline car still had much better range, and you could refuel it in minutes almost anywhere. This raises an important question for buyers back then. Why put up with the short range and long charging times of an EV if the gasoline car is now just as easy to start and offers so much more freedom?
Yeah, that convenience factor is huge. And I guess the economics started shifting too.
Totally. It became a sort of perfect storm favoring gasoline. First, gasoline itself was cheap, really cheap back then. Second, mass production, pioneered by people like Henry Ford with the Model T, drastically lowered the purchase price of gasoline cars. They became affordable for ordinary families.
The Model T effect.
Right. And third, crucially, the infrastructure for gasoline exploded. Gas stations started popping up everywhere, along roadsides in towns across the country. Refueling became incredibly easy and accessible.
While the electrical grid was still lagging behind.
Exactly. Electricity generation and distribution were much less developed, less widespread, especially outside major cities. There just wasn't a comparable network for easily charging electric cars on a large scale. So you had cheap fuel, cheap cars, and fueling stations everywhere for gasoline. EVs just couldn't compete on that practical infrastructural level despite their efficiency.
Which explains that century of dominance. Okay, so fast forward to today. We're seeing this huge EV comeback, this resurgence. What's changed? What's finally allowing EVs to kind of leverage that inherent efficiency they always had?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's basically that those historical roadblocks are finally being dismantled. The EV revolution we're seeing now, it's happening because the technology finally caught up to the potential. We've had massive, and I mean massive, recent progress in battery technology.
Lighter batteries, more energy dense.
Exactly. Addressing those core historical problems, much better range, lighter weight, which improves the car's performance, and crucially, faster charging times. We're talking minutes now for significant range, not entire nights.
And the infrastructure piece.
That's catching up too. Governments and private companies are investing heavily in building out charging networks. It's still developing, but it's becoming far more viable to own and operate an EV for most people. So really, only now, with these recent breakthroughs in batteries and the build-out of charging infrastructure, is the electric car truly entering a new phase where it can compete effectively on a large scale and finally capitalize on that efficiency edge it had all along.
So what does this all mean? We've traced this really winding path from EVs being surprisingly efficient and even popular early on to being completely sidelined by gasoline cars for over a century. And it wasn't just about which engine was better in isolation, was it? It was war, economics, the electric starter, and critically, infrastructure. Now, innovation is finally tackling those old problems, and EVs are back in a big way.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway is that inherent technological superiority, like efficiency, isn't always enough on its own, not by a long shot. For a technology to truly succeed and become widespread, the surrounding ecosystem, the infrastructure, the economics, the user convenience it all has to mature alongside it, they have to evolve together. The story of the EV is just such a powerful example of that interplay.
Absolutely. And maybe a final thought for you listening.
Yeah.
Think about what other technologies might be out there, maybe older ideas, that seem poised for a comeback. Not because they're suddenly brand new, but because the things that held them back historically, maybe battery tech or network speed or material science, are finally being overcome. What does this long, complex journey of the electric car tell us about spotting future trends and understanding how today's solutions might unlock yesterday's forgotten potential? Something to think about.